So, here we go for round 2. I'm against somebody called Snapcaster Mage. And ironically, my opening hand has 2 Snapcaster Mages in. It has a Steam Vents, which is fine. This is the sort of hand where you look at it and you go 2 Lightning Bolts, 2 Snapcaster Mages. If I want it to be, that's 12 damage on my opponent. Plus, if they make any fetches or shocks, I don't need too many attacks in. This is the sort of hand that could go really aggressive. Or I could kill my opponent's creatures if they're playing creatures. So I'm definitely going to keep this hand, and we'll have to see what we're up against. My opponent makes turn 1 Mountain, and as they're a red deck, they have the turn 1 Goblin Guide, because why wouldn't you? My opponent attacks, and I do draw an island, untap, and it's my turn. I draw a Delver of Secrets. So my 2 options here are Island and Delver of Secrets, or Steam Vents and Lightning Bolt. I have 9 cards in hand, so I'm going to have to discard if I don't make a land and cast a spell. Delver of Secrets on the draw. If my opponent just makes Mountain Searing Blaze and attacks me, that's me on 13. It's going to take me a lot of damage. I don't feel like just taking all that damage. The best thing you can do against red is stopping taking damage and then getting your own in later. Well, I've got plenty of ways to get my own in later, so I figure I'm going to make Steam Vents and Lightning Bolt this Goblin Guide. Gonna Lightning Bolt it now, just in case my opponent has a Boros Charm, just to give it indestructible, or give them less chance of drawing mutagenic growth, all sorts of reasons. Plus, doesn't mean I have to discard. So I'm down to 7 cards again. I'm on 16. Not terrific, but I do have my manners, my colours sorted. My opponent makes Eidolon the Great Revel, which is probably the best creature in the red deck. I've been really impressed with that card in Modern. I decide to Lightning Bolt it and make my Delver of Secrets. Now, I drew Blood Moon, which is not a strong card against mono mountains deck. It's a bit of a liability, of course, having it in your deck, but it's so strong when it works that you do play a couple of swingy cards. My Delver immediately flips, revealing Taxian Probe, and my options here are leave up Snapcaster Bolt and Deprive, or Taxian Probe and Deprive by paying mana, or paying life for the probe and still having a Snapcaster Bolt and Deprive. I don't like paying life. Going to 12 essentially draws my opponent a card. Since most burn spells deal 3 damage, 12 life is about the same as 11 life, but it's a whole lot less than 14. So I don't want to pay life. I'm going to make my island, keep up Deprive and or, well, strictly or, Snapcaster Mage Lightning Bolt. And then if I draw another an untapped land in future, then I can use that mana for Taxian Probe. My opponent fetches a Sacred Foundry tapped and makes a 4th land. When your red opponent has 4 lands in play and you're still alive by a long way, something's up. So I figure I will make end of turn Snapcaster Lightning Bolt. If my opponent uses the opportunity to deal burn to me, very well. If my opponent deals damage to my creature, that's fewer burn spells pointed at my face. There's not really too much that can go wrong about it with this at this life total. So Snap Bolt my opponent, and my opponent in response Lightning Bolts my Delver of Secrets. And Boros Charms me? Yes, Boros Charms me. That's fine. I'm on 10, my opponent's got 2 cards. That's a maximum of 8 damage if they were both Boros Charms. Feels good. I draw a Spell Snare, so I've got more counter spells. Really, I just want to get in my damage where I can. I'm probably going to Snapcaster Bolt again if I get an opportunity. My opponent goes Monastery Swift Spear, and this isn't the most threatening. My opponent's got 2 cards in hand. I could Snapcaster Bolt this, but I just want to stop taking damage, so I elect to deprive this, and I can Spell Snare something else if need be. My opponent makes a fetch land, and now I really do feel in control of the game. Mana Leak dead, but that's okay, really. Tap my opponent to 9. They draw and make another shot, another fetch land. Use their last card in hand, which is Searing Blaze. So I'm going to Spell Snare that. I could Mana Leak it, force my opponent to crack their fetch lands, and then Spell Snare it. But the Mana Leak might prove randomly useful in the future. So draw a Mand, which again not terrific. My opponent's got enough lands in play to recast anything. in their deck that they wish to. But they need a lightning bolt at my Snapcaster, so I remand it since they've paid the 3 mana, and they'll have to crack their fetches if they want to recast it. I've got a young Pyromancer. My opponent Rift Bolts my creature, and I make young Pyromancer and probe for mana. Although my opponent doesn't have any cards in hand, I've now got 3 power on the board. I'm on 10. I don't think there's anything they can draw. They agree. Well, they draw a Grim Lavamancer. They don't quite agree, but then I lightning bolt this, attack in for a win. Well, for the concession. So in terms of sideboarding, against red, the cards that are not so good obviously are Blood Moon, and these counter spells are okay, but not amazing. Mana Leaks in particular are not very strong. What comes in, clearly the Dragon's Claws, gaining life, are ridiculously good. Dispels, countering any old spell, just anything you can stop is good. And Spellskite, so if I want to bring this Spellskite, I decide to bring in a Remand as well. Although the Deprive can set me back on mana, being a hard counter late is really useful. So I sideboard out these 5, bring in these 5. So, going into game 2, on the draw, my hand has 2 Delver Secrets, a couple of counter spells, a Snapcaster for future use. This is plenty good. I'm a bit worried not having a Lightning Bolt or a Grim Lavamancer or a Spell Snare means I might be a bit dead to an Eidolon and the Great Revel, but I figure it's okay enough. Goblin Guide makes me extra wary, and I revealed Gitaxian Probe, so not amazing. I draw that, make Island, and play a Delver Secrets. I could keep up Spell Pierce, but I think I'm not going to win this game by sitting back and doing nothing. My opponent cracks their Bloodstone Mire for another Sacred Foundry, so my opponent's on 15. You know, if my goal is to burn my opponent out, that's helping me a lot. But Searing Blaze, that's brutal. I draw a Polluted Delta, and I go to 13. So I drew another island. That's good. That's useful. I think I want to make a Delver of Secrets and keep up Spell Pierce. I want to protect this one, but I know I'm going to go to 11 from the Goblin Guide, but I just need to get a threat into play. Now I play the wrong land here. I should have played a Scalding Tarn. My thought was, if I make the Polluted Delta, I can crack it for an island. If I made a Scalding Tarn, then I could crack it for a mountain but not cast my spell. But I do need to fetch a mountain at some point, and the longer I leave it, the less likely I am to be able to crack a fetch land. So, definitely a bit awkward. I crack now, make an island, and that was honestly foolish. I wanted to have the best chance of flipping my Delver. So if I crack my fetch before this Goblin Guide trigger resolves, if I draw a land, I'll draw it, and I'm closer to a spell for Delver of Secrets. I didn't think it through, but when I crack that fetch, there's a brief window where my opponent can just kill my Delver of Secrets and my Spell Pierce isn't live. If I want to do that plan, I should crack the Polluted Delta for an island on my turn. If I don't want to do that plan, I should leave it uncracked. There's just no excuse for what I did. Well, I draw a Spellskite, or I will draw a Spellskite. That's a good card to draw. My opponent Lava Spikes me, so I counter that. Remember, I just want to counter anything at all, and my opponent Lava Spikes me again. So, that Delver of Secrets reveals that Spellskite. And now I'm at the point, look, I'm on 7 life. That's 2 3s and 1. If I crack a Scalding Tarn, I'm on 2 3s. Well, that's not good for me at all. So, I Gitaxian Probe just to see what's up, and you may have missed it. There was Core Firewalker, don't care too much, Lava Spike, and Skullcrack. So my opponent has 6 points of damage that goes straight to my head, and Spellskite can't even redirect. So I make the Spellskite because it can block a Goblin Guide, but honestly, I'm in a bit of trouble here. I attack with my Delver, and I don't make my land. Oh no, I already did. I played my island. Foolish me. My opponent makes Skullcrack, fetches off a mountain, Lava Spikes me, puts me to 1. So I'm pretty dead. I know my opponent's got only a Core Firewalker in hand. Remand. Well, that's going to help. I draw a Remand, and I make my land, and I start attacking. I made my land because in future there's a chance I draw a Dragon's Claw, in which case I can gain the life of the Dragon's Claw, then sack my fetch lands to cast any spells. So it's worth just leaving them in play, even though I'm not going to crack them. My opponent's not going to be able to punish me with any Price of Progress effects. Anathemancer isn't seeing play in Modern. So, Lightning Bolt is my opponent's draw. They didn't make the core Firewalker first to gain a life because they're playing around that remand they've seen. They want to be able to recast it. Well, I redirect it to my Spells Guide, and now my opponent gets to attack him with the Goblin Guide. Their idea is that if I block with my Spells Guide will die. I don't want that to happen, so I Vapor Snag the Goblin Guide. Getting one more point of damage, my opponent's on 9. That's a multiple of 3, so that's quite good for me. And they make core Firewalker, which I can't do anything about. But that's okay. Serum Visions. Now, I don't cast this Serum Visions because I can Snapcast a Vapor Snag, which is what I'm going to do regardless of what happens. I attack for 3. My opponent casts Goblin Guide, gains their life, and they've got 1 card in hand, and I figure at this point, do you know what? There's nothing really I can do about it. I'm just going to have to Snapcast a Vapor Snag this turn, and hope that my opponent hasn't got a burn spell for my face. They draw a mountain, well, they play a mountain, so suddenly I'm very happy. They don't attack, not really sure why, I guess playing around Snapcaster Mage, but in any event, it means end of turn, I Snapcaster and Vapor Snag on the core Firewalker, get rid of that life they gained, put them back to a multiple of 6, and I've got Deprive in my hand, so I don't care if they cast the Firewalker again, and if they cast a burn spell, I can deprive it. I draw a Lightning Bolt, which is such a tease since I have no red mana. Still, I attack in for 3. I do cast my Serum Visions on the basis that all I want to do is deprive a burn spell, and I draw into a Sulphur Falls, which is enough to cast that Lightning Bolt. So, make it, burn my opponent out. My opponent, Snapcaster Mage, lol. Snapcaster Mage, lol. 2-0.